Okay, students, welcome back to What to Expect this semester. We have some special guests, including students from our Transfer Relations team, but with us we have the Director of Transfer Relations, Amanda Reeder. Thank you for joining us this morning and giving us some tips and tricks, and also just some highlights of what the Transfer Relation Office does. And so Amanda, with that, maybe you could just give us a little bit of a highlight of what your office provides and how students who are transferring can take advantage of that.
Thank you. So Transfer Success Center really has two primary functions in terms of how we interact with students. The first is going to be if you're an incoming transfer student, you may have met myself or one of my team or one of the peer mentors. Last year, as we traveled to the Wyoming and local community colleges to help transfer students get prepared to come to the university. And now that you are here and you are coming as a new Cowboy transfer, we have what we think of as sort of onboarding activities for transfer students. Getting connected to a new university after you started at a previous institution can be a challenge, and so we try and smooth over all of those rough edges. We have a first year seminar that's specifically transfer focused. We collaborate with several other entities. For example, with the co-library, there's a personal librarian program specifically for transfer students. And then we also have peer mentors who themselves were transfer students to the university, transferred successfully, and now help us mentor, support, and encourage transfer students as they start at the university as new Cowboys.
I appreciate that. I think students could come and find you. Where might they go this semester, knowing that COVID has sort of impacted our face-to-face abilities?
They should call and make an appointment. We do have offices on the second floor of Knight Hall, and at the moment we are staffing those offices, but COVID is requiring all of us to be on our toes and change relatively quickly. So probably the most surefire way that a student can get in touch with us would be to email transfer@uwyo.edu. We will get back to you right away. My personal extension is 766-6665, and we will get back to you that way. You can drop in, but because we are doing flex scheduling, a student's best bet to make sure that they get an immediate response would be to contact us via email.
I appreciate that. So Amanda, I know that we have with us some special guests, particularly your peer mentors, and maybe you could just give us a little bit of some expertise of like how we can all utilize their skill set.
Sure. So we have Chase, Grace, and Sarah with us today. And these are three of our peer mentors. We have more. All of them are transfer students. Sarah is our transfer student from out of Wyoming. And then Grace and Chase are both from within Wyoming. So if it's okay, I'll introduce them and then they can tell us a little bit about their experience and then maybe give a piece of advice for incoming transfer students. So Chase, my question for you is how important do you think it is for a new transfer student to try and get involved when they start at the university?
I actually transferred from Northeastern Junior College in Sterling, Colorado, but I'm originally from Wyoming, so I guess kind of a little bit unique in the way that I left Wyoming and came back. Like you said, I do think it's very, very important to get involved, and that's one way that I felt that my transition, why it went as smooth as it did. I know it can be hard coming to a new place, to meet new people, to familiarize yourself with your surroundings. And I think whether it's joining a club, getting into a student organization, something like that, it helps you familiarize yourself with not only the campus, but the town of Laramie and a lot of the faculty and students that participate as well.
Grace, you came to us from LCCC, so just down the road, but you're a first generation student, if I'm not mistaken. Can you give some sort of a perspective on how you think that impacted your experience as a transfer student and advice you would have?
Yeah, so being a first generation college student has its own struggles, even when you're not a transfer. And so it really took this process of being, switching institutions, and it really made me feel very lonely, very lost. And it wasn't because my parents didn't want to help. I was just asking a lot of questions they didn't exactly know the answers to. Things like the financial aid process, resources available to me, and how to find or how to fill out the paperwork I needed to change from one institution to the other. And so it drove me to be an independent student, and it kind of forced me to do a lot of research on the university, the campus layout, the classes I was taking, the different resources available to me. And so in the end, it actually helped me to become an even more well-rounded transfer peer mentor, because I was able to take the experiences I had and learn from them. And so for the people that might be first generation college students as well as transfers, just be patient with yourself. You're gonna get through it. And then that's why we have resources like the Transfer Peer Mentors, is to lighten some of that stress that you're probably feeling.
And Sarah, you come to us from Colorado, right? So as somebody who not only transferred, but transferred from out of state, that I think probably changed your perspective a little bit compared to our other students. Do you have any words of advice or reflections on that experience?
Coming from a bordering state, like Denver is only about 2.5 hours away, it was still a pretty big transition just because I wasn't familiar with the area. I hadn't really spent a lot of time in Wyoming before I came here, so it still kind of felt like a big move, even though it really wasn't that far away. It did make it a little bit more intimidating, especially like figuring out what the job market was like up here in Laramie, figuring out like where the best places to live were for students, even just not being familiar with the layout of the city. It was hard for me, like when I was apartment hunting, to send like where would be the best place to live if I wanted to like walk to school or to work. And so it was really helpful when I actually went to orientation and we had some peer mentors talk about some of like the student housing options on campus, but also off campus, how to find like groups on Facebook, try to find roommates and stuff. It was just really helpful to have people who were here who were more familiar with the area to kind of give me some advice about like how to apartment hunt and also how to find jobs and get everything settled before I moved. And so, yeah, I definitely felt like I had a lot of help in that. And so that definitely helped with the transition. And I know that everything's a little up in the air and weird right now with COVID. So I'm sure that's been adding a different element of stress, especially to our out-of-state students who are coming from areas where it might be a little bit more populated and trying to figure that out. But yeah, it definitely helped having people who are familiar with the area to kind of answer those questions and help me out, which is why I think the peer mentorship program is so important.
I have teenagers and they tell me that only old people, meaning me, use Facebook, but Facebook actually can be helpful for students, right, in Laramie?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that's where we have the transfer Facebook page. I'll be posting on that, I think, a little bit more throughout this semester, just to help with giving updates, what's going on. Especially like Laramie Classifieds really helped me as well. People like sell furniture on there, stuff like that. So yeah, Facebook, I don't really use it that much for like personal stuff, but for like practical, like moving reasons and stuff like that, it's still pretty relevant.
Great, thank you.
Well, that was fantastic. And I think you all have such great experiences that will help benefit so many of our students who are transferring to us. One thing I might offer, and maybe you all could help chime in here, is what are some activities in a normal semester that you might be doing? And then how will you make adjustments during COVID? And what should a student expect to see from your all's office about how to get involved?
Well, typically the transfer peer mentors and the transfer department are involved in the Cowboy Connect event and the welcome week. And so not having that this semester was obviously very different and super weird, because that provides us an outlet for these transfer students to say, go here and meet transfers and, relate to people that you can actually talk to about your transferring process and they'll understand. And so I think that we're going to, like Sarah said, we're going to try to enforce the Facebook page more and really try to help people connect to one another virtually. Really been encouraging students to take advantage of the virtual options that are open so that when, campus reopens as usual or to our new normal, that they won't be completely lost. They'll have some sense of familiarity with, the campus itself as well as the activities that go on with it.
Amanda, anything you would want to add there?
I would say I think one of the themes is getting involved is, I think, pretty critical for whether you're a traditional age student starting as a freshman at an institution or as a transfer student, but maybe especially as a transfer student, because you're having to get used to a new way of doing things, new policy. Like all colleges do essentially the same things, but they all do them a little bit differently. And that it can be a little more challenging. It's not like you're going to be able to go into the union and just sit down and ask a question. But I also think that staff and faculty and our student workers, our peer mentors, we're all really aware of how unusual this semester is going to be, and we're going to try and be super responsive. So I don't know of a student who probably doesn't have access to a phone or internet. So, and I cannot stress enough, just reaching out via email or calling. If anything seems weird to you, it probably is because it's COVID. That's my advice. Raise your hand, ask a question. If you don't ask a question, there are deadlines and things that you might not know about. And it's better to fix things on the front end than to try and find a solution on the back end. And I would like to say that I think that everyone across campus, not just our office, but we're all here to help. And if we don't have the answer, we'll find it for you. So I think start by asking a question, and then one way or another, we'll figure out what the solution is together.
Is there a phone number you could repeat just so students know how to get in touch with your office?
Absolutely. My phone number, my direct line is 307-766-6665. And then the email for all of transfer services is transfer@uwyo.edu.
Well, again, it's such a pleasure to have all of you here today. I know there's a lot happening, and taking the time out to really spend some energy about how we really care for our transfer students is just very much appreciated. So with that, we'll be back in touch as things move or progress this semester. And thank you again for taking the time, and thank you for dedicating your time and service to students who are transferring.